Bronwyn, thanks very much. And it has been a really great experience to be here for the last 2 years in the Switch project. We've seen lots of success. And what I want to do now is really kind of encapture how transport, physical activity, and health could have come together, and then the role of ICT. So where does technology fit into this? And has it got a place? So I'm going to go back, because this is an overview of everything. So let's take right back again to why our bodies are as we are, because I want to kind of put the concept of health being totally integral to transport, not just an add-on. So we haven't stopped developing. We stopped developing about 100,000 years ago. So 100,000 years, we are pretty much identical to what we were. And we are hunter-gatherers. So if you look back, and if you take 1,000 years to an hour, then go back 100 hours, it makes it easier to think. So that's 100 hours is about 4 days. So 4 days ago, or 100,000 years, we were hunter-gatherers. We were doing exactly the same thing for generation after generation after generation for all of those years until about 10 hours ago, or 10,000 years. And then we started agriculture. But even then, we were outdoors, we were active. And then after that, we started industrialization and civilization. So civilization was 4 hours ago, industrialization was just 9 minutes ago. And at that point, physical activity changed. We became more sedentary. But the real change, the real kind of influence, has been screens and ICT. So just for this last, 80 seconds, our bodies are having to do something it's never, ever done before for all of those times. So if you were developing a software program and you were told you had 4 days to develop it, and then in the last 80 seconds you were told to change it entirely, it wouldn't work. And we don't work. We're in an environment that's not suited to our bodies. Our bodies are designed for what we should have been doing over the last 4 days. So what we're programmed to be is sociable. We're social beasts in places which we feel supportive, and we have purpose. That's what a hunter-gatherer was. A hunter-gatherer was in places where there was water, where there was food, where there was animals, where there was shelter. It was working with people, so we were in small groups, and everyone had a purpose. Unfortunately, our cities and towns now don't have that. We have isolation. Isolation, just by the way, has exactly the same risk factor as smoking does for cardiovascular disease. Smoking and isolation or loneliness are identical in risk factors for heart disease. We have places which we will be talking about a lot which don't work for us. They don't allow us to go out. We feel intimidated. There's hostility. There's noise. There's pollution. So we feel hostile and stressed when we go into the environments in some cities and some places. And increasingly, there's this lack of purpose, particularly where there's unemployment, where there are problems with young people being out of work. So what does that mean? Well, that means that you get chronic stress on the body. And when you're chronically stressed, you become inactive. So our bodies are designed that when we're stressed, we conserve energy, because we don't know what's going to happen next. So all of us know that during a stressful period of time, we start to find it harder to go to the walk. We find it harder to go to the gym. Because we're stressed, we also eat the wrong things. We eat fat and sugar, because when we're stressed, our body's trying to get more energy in. So we do all the wrong things when we're stressed. And if you've got this chronic stress in the city, however much you try and change people, to try and change them to do different things, to walk or cycle, if there's this inherent stress of a hostile environment, then people aren't going to do it. We have to change things further upstream. So this chronic stress creates these stress hormones. So I'm going to go a little bit of a medical side now, but this is, don't worry, I'll come back out again. So you haven't come to a medical conference. But chronic stress causes stress hormones, and it causes inactivity and poor eating and smoking and all the other things. Now, what that leads to in our bodies is something which has only really just been realized in the last 10 years, is where the immune system doesn't switch off and it starts to attack our bodies. And that's called chronic inflammation. Why is chronic inflammation important? Because chronic inflammation is the cause of all these things. Every single one of those conditions has its origin in chronic inflammation. So in other words, all Western diseases, all the problems we have with diabetes, obesity, cancers, everything comes down to the fact the immune system is not behaving properly. And that can be traced back to chronic stress, inactivity, the poor diet, and that can be traced back to a poor environment, an urban environment that's wrong, or people not having a purpose, or people not being sociable, being isolated. And we can trace this down to children. So the very fact in Switch we were dealing with school children in primary school age is absolutely critical, because the first signs of these diseases can be found in children as young as 6. And that's only because we've been looking there. Actually, it goes down to the babies have been found because of prenatal, because the health of the mother influences immediately the health of the child and the baby. So we've got something, we can't just address it in health terms. For older people, we have to go right way through the entire generations down to children. So what happens if we get people active? Well, it reduces inflammation. So not only can we reduce the stress, but if we can't reduce the environment quick enough, we can get people active. When we get people active, the fat around the tummy, which creates lots of inflammation, which comes out through stress, disappears much more quickly than the fat around the rest of the body. So when you become active, you lose the visceral fat, which is around the organs of the body, much quicker than the rest of the fat, and that is the toxic fat. That's the fat that causes inflammation. Every time you're active, every time a child walks to school or walks to work, they release anti-inflammatories. They release chemicals that take away the inflammation, that reduce the inflammation in the body. And finally, right at the heart, when we're sedentary, all of you sitting there now, damage is beginning to accumulate. I'm okay, because I'm standing. But you are all aging faster than me. And I'm watching you age very slowly, and I'm going to show you what's happened in your cells, which is causing you to age, because you're not moving. Here's a cell. In that little green thing is the battery of the cell. That's the mitochondria. The mitochondria, there are billions and billions of them in our body. If you added them all together, they would weigh the same as a car battery. So we literally have billions of little car batteries inside us. Put them all together, you get a big one. But they have to keep moving. Those batteries are designed like dynamos on a bike. They have to keep moving. So let's have a look and see what happens. So this is a sedentary behavior. Also, high fat can do it, and stress, as we've just found out. This is you sitting. You may not be stressed, hopefully, and you may not have had a big breakfast, but you are sitting.
Feel free to stand up.
Yeah, do feel free. I am trying to get you to kind of move. You can see the hints I'm sort of making, and you're still sitting. You won't be by the end. So around the mitochondria, this battery, so this is the room. This room would be the cell. This is one mitochondria, about 30 mitochondria per cell. Every single cell of the body has it. Every animal has it. Every plant has it. Every slug, every snail, every bit of moss, every bit of life has mitochondria like this. So the outside, that red thing pulsating is the charge. It's charging up because it's waiting to be used. But nothing's happening because you're still sitting. So electrons leak out. It's like a dam. You have a massive dam. And if you have that dam and it's not very looked after, you get little leaks of water coming through. That's what happens. The electrons can't keep back. They just keep leaking out. Those are free radicals. Free radicals cause damage. They cause damage to the mitochondria of the DNA of the mitochondria. And we'll see they go out as well. So you have this problem here of being sedentary, like plugging your phone into the wall and leaving your phone, your mobile phone, all over the weekend. You pick your phone up afterwards and it's warm because electrons have been leaking out of that battery. That battery will never be as good as it was because you've overcharged it. You're overcharging your mitochondria. Okay, you become active. You stand up. Hint. And no more free radicals because the potential difference has dropped. It's being used. It's like a dynamo, and there are no more electrons coming out and you build up more antioxidants, you build up more mitochondria. So those children walking to school compared to those children not, those people walking to work have managed to keep their mitochondria going. So what happens to that damaging free radical? Well, they go off and they hit the chromosomes in your cell, and they knock off the end of the chromosomes, and now we know that when those chromosomes are knocked off, they stop dividing, and when they stop dividing, that cell is aging. In other words, your skin gets thinner, your muscles get thinner, your brain gets thinner. Everything gets thinner, which is called natural aging, because the cells aren't being replaced, because you've damaged the main part of the cell, the telomeres. And this thing is when the end of the cell comes, which is not dead, not alive, creates lots of inflammation. So, the chronic stress has come from an environment that's bad, from isolation and loneliness, from people not having purpose because we're not hunter-gatherers. That causes chronic stress, that causes stress hormones and changes of behavior. That causes mitochondrial damage, telomere shortening, inflammation, and that leads to all the conditions. Now, I, as a doctor, clear up the bottom part, but it's too late. You deal with much higher up, and that's where health has to go. Poor health isn't a result of a lack of medication, a lack of operations, a lack of doctors, a lack of hospitals. Poor health is because we've got it wrong in how we've designed our environments and how we live our life, because we're not designed to be in this environment. We have to change the environment and the way we live in order to fit into what we should be. And that's why physical inactivity from WHO is the 4th leading cause of death from preventable disease. So you can look at the other 3 things above it, which is smoking, high blood pressure, and high blood sugar, diabetes, and then inactivity, and then obesity. So obesity is slightly less than inactivity. And if we look at conditions of comparing United States, Netherlands, and UK, and understanding the impact this has, and this came out in the Lancet at the time of the Olympics. So you can see here, let's look at breast cancer. The blue line is the UK. 18% of all deaths from breast cancer are due to inactivity. But in the Netherlands, it's 4%. So only 4% of deaths from breast cancer are caused by inactivity in the Netherlands compared to the UK, which is 18%. A big, big gap because you're more active in the Netherlands. Who's from Holland here? Well done. Why are you here? And the United States are better than the UK because although they're more obese, they've actually got more activity. As a doctor, I'm very interested in these things: diabetes, cholesterol, high blood pressure, smoking, obesity. But what I should be interested in is lack of fitness, because 16% of deaths from this study was caused by low fitness, whereas obesity, only 3% of deaths. Studies have now shown that actually physical activity is about twice as more important than obesity. So now you can see the context of why transport and getting people active, which is by far the most important way of getting people more active, is so important to health. It's not the things I can do at the bottom here. So what's changed? Smartphones have come through. So what I'm going to do now is going to talk about a little bit about motivation, and then about all the different ways that we can use technology, because we've just seen that actually the changes that have taken place are nothing to do with technology, really, apart from us sitting. They're to do with the fact that we're not connected with the environment, we're not connected to people, and we haven't got purpose. But now we've got a massive change. We've got people all with phones. 66% in the UK in 2016, only 27% in 2011. Children now watching less television, they're looking at their smartphone. So we've got to change. Let's have a look at the motivation now and see what we have to do to try and change people's behavior. What we need to do is to get a habit. So a habit is defined as behavior which are all routines that are triggered by situations and then followed on automatically with some reward. 66 days is a great title there. 66 days creates a habit. So if you do something for 66 days-ish, you will create, or more likely to create, a habit. So you need something to motivate you to get started, but the habit is what continues if you keep that behavior changing. So the next thing is social motivation. We've just seen that we're social animals, so it's not surprising that actually you need other people to help you, because we're incredibly sociable, incredibly sociable. So if we share the goals or complete the goals of an audience or group, far more likely to have success. We don't learn from our experiences, we learn from what other people are doing. The word of mouth, talking to neighbors, talking to friends, talking to colleagues, parents, children, that all works. And connecting to socially with others is meant to be as important as food and water. We've seen that because we're hunter-gatherers. So the social motivation is absolutely critical. And finally, the goal reinforcement. We need to feel as progress. We need to feel that success, that purpose bit we saw right at the beginning. Sorry, there's a word missing there. It's meant to be goals there. The success from achieving several smaller goals provides the positive momentum necessary for achieving bigger goals. We should be breaking goals up into tiny, tiny, small sections. On New Year's Day, we set big goals, ambitious goals about what we're going to do, and we break them. What we have to do when we're doing new behavior change for getting people to change their behavior is setting these little tiny, small goals the whole time. Incremental increase. So let's have a look and see which technology works and what doesn't, and whether technology is a hindrance and the enemy for physical activity, or is it the friend of physical activity? Let's have a look at both sides. So I'm going to talk about the hindrance, the enemy. We've just seen that in the last 80 seconds of our development, in the 4 days, actually screen time has increased, and that's decreased physical activity. So if we look here, we now know that cell phone use has increased, and people who the more likely to use the phone are less likely to be active. That doesn't show cause, that just shows association. It's also associated with behaviors we know are detrimental to physical activity, like television viewing. Screen time and obesity totally connected together. And we know also that cardiovascular disease and everything else increases with more screen time. So the more screen time that children and adults have, the more likely they're going to be overweight, and the more likely they're going to have heart disease. Not surprising, perhaps, but that was irrespective of levels of physical activity, showing that there's something going on. It's that sedentary behavior. So now we know it's not just the amount of activity you do, the 150 minutes, it's how much you've been sitting in between. You can be sitting all day for 10 hours and do your 20-minute walk at the end of the day. I'm afraid that 20-minute walk will not compensate for the 10 hours of sitting. That 10 hours of sitting has done damage. You never get that back again. We have to be moving and breaking it up, and that's what this is starting to show. It's the sitting at the emails at our desks for those length of time. And also we know that for well-being, self-worth, all those things about purpose, screens and computer games seem to take away a lot of that purpose. So far, we've not really kind of given screens and computers a good name. Interestingly, a study that came through found that physical activity could be increased and screen time reduced by having change of environment. It wasn't actually perceived safety, strangely enough, but it was better pavements, better infrastructure. Having a different way of looking at a town or a city actually can reduce screen time and increase physical activity. And also we can say that MVPA is moderate intensity physical activity, or moderate volume physical activity, and shows, not surprisingly, that television viewing is the worst, then computer games only for boys. But actually, non-gaming screen time shows that physical activity isn't changed. So television screen seems to be the real culprit. That's the one that's causing the biggest problems. So, can physical activity be our savior? Can it get everyone moving? Can it be the answer to the problems that we've just been showing? Well, let's look at the barriers which have been found from all the research in the world, gathered together, and we look at what's happened. People say there's not enough time to exercise. IT can't do that. ICT can't improve that. Find it inconvenient to exercise. Technology can't change that either. Lack of motivation, self-motivation, it can't really help there. Don't find exercise enjoyable. Possibly help there, but not really. Lack of confidence. Fear of being injured. So these things, technology really can't help. Lack of self-management skills, such as the ability to set personal goals, yes. That's where technology can really help, by giving people feedback about what they're doing. So that's where there is some help. Lack of encouraged support, companionship, yes, we gamify it, we make it games, we get people to do it with us, yes, we can get that. And then don't have parks and sidewalks and pavements, etc. Well, we know it can't really help that. So we have to focus actually where technology can help in changing physical activity. So which part of technology can we use? Well, we can get a website. So what happens when we get a website? Not great evidence. Not really great evidence. And websites are now moving away. We're not really getting people to go to websites anymore. Social media's taken on. So this research, all the research now, is out of date before it's even published, because things are moving forward. But only most times where websites have been used, there's been virtually no change in physical activity. People visit it a few times, and then they fade away. You can send emails and text and peer support to support that website, but that's slightly different. This has been actually just on the SMS text, can actually improve compliance and effectiveness of internet-based inventions. So this is slightly wider than just websites. And there is a slight small increase in physical activity, but it's really small when you've got all the studies pulled together. But there needs to be that encouragement with it. You can't just put a website up and just say that's going to be the answer. It just doesn't work. Geocaching. Everyone know what geocaching is? Yeah. So it's when you've got thousands and thousands and thousands of little places around the country where people can go and find something, leave a message, and move on. Everyone said that's the answer. We create a big treasure hunt of geocaching. Everyone does geocaching. Millions of people. Yes, millions of people. But who are those people doing geocaching? Mean age 40 years old, male, white, well-educated, and their average income $75,000. These aren't the people we're really, really needing to get to. And those of you who do geocaching will be wondering what's gone wrong with the very bottom bit. Why aren't they earning $75,000? But this was in the United States, looking at who does geocaching. So often if we're trying to get the mass population, we've got to be careful we don't just go into target small groups. Yes, you can get millions of people, thousands of people, but would these people be doing it anyway? And for health, I'm afraid these are not people I'm the slightest bit interested in, because I'm looking at people who don't earn very much, who aren't very healthy, and maybe of ethnic origin from elsewhere. Text, constant text, old-fashioned text. Yes, but one thing that shows that there can be success in motivating and getting people to become more active and changing their behavior. SMS texts have shown that there's been a good effect, particularly when it's associated with other aspects, like pedometers and cultural changes and getting people together. But certainly physical activity in both adolescents and all the way through to older people, texts are completely ubiquitous. People have the ability to do that. Pedometers, yes, that can work as well. So it's a simple pedometer, but mostly to get a baseline. People realize that when they use a pedometer for the first 2 months or 3 months, they know how little activity they're doing. If they're meant to be doing 10,000 steps, they realize they're only doing 1,200, and they're fairly shocked. After the 3 months, it fades away. And that's the problem with many of these things. But for getting a baseline for people to understand how far they are from where they should be, pedometers do work. And they've been used in studies particularly associated with footballers and football games and other areas where men, particularly who are inactive, can become active. So we come on to the wearables, which, of course, are flourishing, but they're expensive still. Some of them very expensive, but they are much more used. This is the percentage of the population in the United States who are now using wearables. Very much in the younger age group. The time has gone up and up and up. But what happens is after 3 months, about 50% of people have stopped using them. And after a year, it's about 80%. So in other words, great enthusiasm to start with, but it fades. If we go back to our origins of being hunter-gatherers, these don't fit in really to our psyche. The visceral, the really excitement, the bit that really gets us is actually connection to other people, connection to a place, and giving us some real value, which associates often with being with place. All the technologies are good for people who are already active because it makes them have a better experience, but it's not getting the inactive to become active, apart from text messages and pedometers, which have been shown to have some improvement. And all the thousands of apps that we've got, again, increase in use initially, if at all, and then a very, very, very sharp decline afterwards, unless that person's already motivated, in which case they're not the people we need to do. But there is no evidence that they get the inactive to become active, which is shocking when you think everyone thinks the app will be the answer. It gets the people who are active to enjoy their experience, to remain active. When I park my car, I use an app. It's not the app that's made me park my car. I wanted to park my car, but the app has made it easier to park my car. If I'm active, I use my app to make my activity more exciting. I don't if I'm inactive, thinking I must go and buy that app, and then I'll become active. It doesn't work. So we put too much thinking that it will work. We'll hear a little bit about Beat Street, where we're using technology in a different way, because we're trying to make it outdoors and we're trying to make it very much more a game and make it sociable. And if we look at what people found was really motivating about it, it wasn't the technology. Those two places, Thurrock and Reading. Thurrock is a very, very deprived area. Reading, the more affluent area. And you can see that the bottom three, in Thurrock, the deprived area, having fun was the #1 reason why they carried on doing it. It wasn't because they wanted to be more healthy or have less disease. It wasn't because they wanted to get their 150 minutes of activity. It wasn't because they had to get their 10,000 steps. Those are irrelevant to those people. They wanted to have fun. They wanted to enjoy it. They wanted to be with other people. They wanted their life to be a better life. And even in Reading, there was fun, but also feeling more healthy. That's different from not having diabetes. I don't think, in my ambition, one day I'm going to grow up and I won't have diabetes. I think one day I'll grow up and I'm going to really enjoy my life. It's going to be fun. And I'm going to be fit and I'm going to be healthy. So these are the things that we look to try and change their behavior. And actually, even spending time with family and friends, doing something good for the environment, having time for... These are all the things that people do. This is what drives people. So if we look at the summary, physical activity is not just an add-on, it's actually fundamental. We went down to the cell level to realize how important it is. And sedentary behavior is an increasingly bigger problem. You're still sitting. You're still aging. I'm getting a bit younger as I stand here. It's totally unnatural inactivity. We were not designed to be. Every part of our body and cell has been designed to be on the move all the time, just gently on the move. Technology, it's filled a void. And inactivity is a consequence. We can't blame technology for it all, but we can actually show that there has been this void in people's lives, and technology has filled it in for, unfortunately, with the consequence of not being active. And it's this part of motivation to get people active is not through lack of disease, nor through technology, but it's that positive experience, that people, purpose, place. It's the connecting to other people, connecting to places we feel are supportive, and giving us purpose. Thanks very much.